I'm Nick Terzo, and you are listening to The Radical. My guest this week, contrary to his young age, has been involved in a myriad of music projects. His newest band, Sixa, released their new record earlier this year. It's a fascinating record encompassing styles like cumbia, Peruvian Chicha, and rock. It's beautifully ethereal and perfectly captures the harsh beauty of the Southwest. He was also recently chosen by the Kennedy Center to represent the state of Arizona in its Across America series. Aside from his solo work, he has also performed with artists such as KT Tunsil, Calexico, and Giant Sand. Singer-songwriter Brian Lopez joins me this week to explore his creativity and unique path as an independent artist. Up next, my chat with Brian Lopez. Hey, Brian, thanks for coming to the show.
Hey, Nick. Glad to be here, man. Good to see you.
It has been a long time, so I'm going to try to fill in some blanks here with you today.
Let's do it. Yeah, I can't even remember the last time I saw you. Maybe it's been about 10 years since I've seen you CC'd on an email, but yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. So we have some catching up. So you have a new band, fairly new band called Sixa.
Sixa.
And you have a new record out called Genesis.
That's true. Genesis.
Is that right?
That is correct.
And it's fascinating because it's this really ethereal, kind of moody, definitely captures your geography in a way, which is interesting since you're in Tucson. It definitely has a feel of the Southwest to it. So tell me a little bit about that. Who else is in the band with you? And I know you alternate vocals somewhat.
Yeah, we're basically like the Chicano Beatles. No. So it's actually a 6-piece, and it's fronted by myself and a producer, musician, songwriter named Gabriel Sullivan, who's one of my best friends here in town and also just a very talented songwriting peer. We started the group, I'd say like in 2012, and we were called Chicha Dust at the time, and we were a cover band covering psychedelic Peruvian Chicha music, because that's what one does, obviously, when you're bored. And we did it.
Chicha music? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Chicha it's a genre that emerged from Peru in the 60s and 70s. And when your listeners think of Peruvian music, what comes to mind might be more of like the mellifluous pan flute type, Appalachian songs, very melody driven, beautiful songs. But this was in the 60s and 70s when rock and roll was kind of making its way down to Latin America. So you're getting a lot of like farfisa organs. You're getting a lot of, Fender Jaguars and Jazz Masters, kind of surf rock influence type stuff. And it was like a subculture of a cumbia, which is pretty popular. There's different types of cumbias spread throughout Latin America, but Peru is very interesting. It's a very tropical, very psychedelic type of cumbia, and they call it chicha, which is also a fermented alcoholic beverage as well. So some of your listeners might know the drink. But so I got obsessed with this music in around 2010. I was playing a show in Brooklyn at a place called Barbès, which still exists. And I played one cover song called Ojos Azules. And I didn't even realize the song was of Peruvian origin. And the bar owner pulled me aside afterwards, said, "Oh, I love that song. You love Peruvian music?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "That's a Peruvian song." Well, check this out. I'm not just a bar. I'm also running a label. And our first compilation I just released this year. And he showed me this compilation called Roots of Chicha, Volume 1, right? And since then, if you go online, like that compilation's blown up. And I've, traveled and toured throughout Europe and the North America. And like, Chicha music it's already made its way throughout the world. It's like, so when I got home, I started a band with Gabe and we started covering Chicha music. And that got really popular really fast. And we kind of realized that the ceiling for a cover band was probably not as high as if we started an original band influenced through the lens of Chicha music, and then subsequently through the region where we live, which we have more Mexican cumbia here, but we still love rock and roll, and we still love, a lot of things that a lot of people love around the world. So anyways, we changed the name to Sixa around 2016. We've released 2 EPs, an LP in 2016, and then just last month we released Genesis, which has been doing really, really well, and it feels like a lot of people for the first time are noticing that we've been putting in work for like 8 years, but really it's like the first time they're hearing us. Either way, it's been fun, and I'm glad that you like recognize the music as like a geographical thing right away. That's kind of the point, and I'm glad that you're picking up on that so easily.
Yeah, once in a while I have a moment when I'm not in my senior moments. I have a clarity moment. So, were you able to record in one room, or was this during the pandemic, or was it prior, or did you remotely? How did you do it?
The recordings for this record were prior to pandemic. We have our own recording studio called Dust and Stone Recording Studio here in Tucson, Arizona, which affords us the luxury of, experimentation and all the things that you can imagine if you have your own time. So we had about 25 songs written, and 10 of them made the record. And it's very much a global pandemic type of album. Like, I think it makes a lot more sense in 2021 than it would have in 2020 when it was supposed to be released, because we had to push back the release date. And I'm quite thankful for that, actually. I think people had to go through some shit to kind of actually give our sound a chance. It was a little too fluffy, poppy world prior to that. And I don't know if we would have, I don't know, it might have been too scary for people.
Interesting. Well, I love that song. May They Call Us Home. It's fantastic. And Eclipse is awesome.
Thank you.
And Land Where We Lie is that one I like the best. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Did you Land Where We Lie? We blatantly reference like 80s new wave and try to do it in a way that also highlighted cumbia and stuff. We even threw in a Lost Boys reference, that Cry Little Sister with the
Cry Little Sister
boys chorus at the end.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, well, I mean, what are the themes then? I mean, talk about that. I mean, you did say it's more appropriate maybe for 2021. What are the overlying themes of the record, or the larger themes?
So they're pretty broad stroke ideas. Lyrically, we delve into good and evil, light and darkness. There's a lot of Christian references. A lot of the songs titles actually are based off of that. But it's not a Christian album. Otherwise, we'd probably be selling a lot more records.
Don't say that. Don't say that. With a title like Genesis, I don't think so.
Oh, see, I thought we were actually, it was like an homage to the band. No.
See, well, I think it's more the book of.
Yeah. No, well, the title Genesis, it's kind of I wouldn't say a play on words, but it does have a double meaning, obviously, because we are using so many biblical references in the lyrical content. But at the same time, we're not, with the title of the album, we're not trying to, like, the book of Genesis. We're trying to say more like a creation of a new sound has finally emerged after all these years of trying to hone in something that was uniquely us. But at the same time, and then, our album art is done by this artist named Daniel Martin Diaz. He lives in Tucson. He's a good friend of ours, but he's also got a worldwide audience. And if you look into like on his Instagram or any of his social platforms, you'll see a lot of mythologism. You'll see a lot of occult type art, metaphysical stuff. And he's been doing our art since the beginning, music videos and album art, and just we've always been a very aesthetic band. So he's always been part of those conversations. So I feel like his involvement almost informs how we write our music. And I think over the years, we've just gotten tighter at articulating that vision sonically.
Yeah, I think some of the photography I've seen with all of you guys in your black suits kind of in the middle of desert landscapes, I mean, it's striking. The photography that I saw was really striking of whoever shot those. Mm-hmm. And it represents kind of a little bit of the material in this record. It definitely ties it all together.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. You try your best to tie everything together to make it easier on the listener and the person who's going to give you about 2 seconds of their time. And so you cross your fingers and hope that it works.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice piece of work. Are you guys planning eventually? I know this year is still a big question mark. Touring plans around this?
I mean, Nick, like we were supposed to release this last April and be touring by that summer. Obviously those plans got pushed back, and there's still hope that maybe we can do something in Europe in the fall. But as you've seen maybe in the news, like the vaccine rollouts in most of the countries that we'd be visiting are kind of failing epically right now. So you can control the things you can control, and the rest you just have to push aside. We've already started writing material for the next album. I've been working in this room and in our studio, demoing and writing my own stuff, and just constantly staying busy with different projects and falling in love with the craft, which I'd never really had time to do. I kind of just did it because it was out of necessity. Like, oh, I'm in too deep with music, I can't quit now. And you're touring and you're like losing sleep and money and da-da-da. And this last year, I've really been able to fall in love with the craft again. And I'm super thankful for the time to do that, and to realize that I do have something really cool here and unique, and try to figure out the next few years how I want to be perceived, as a writer and somebody who's to be taken seriously.
Right. Makes perfect sense. You're definitely a multi-hyphenate in instrumentally and, all the projects you participate in, which I think is fascinating that you keep yourself that involved. How many instruments do you play? Or are you comfortable with?
Anything guitar related is what I'm going to be most proficient at. I came up with a classical guitar background, and that was what I studied in college. But with that said, I love playing piano probably more than anything. I'm just not nearly as skilled. Nick, I would love to be good at drums. I suck at drums, I realized. I always thought I was decent, and I fucking suck, man.
Don't tell me the guy that tried to learn in elementary school, middle school, and on drum pads, and
that's
put me on a drum kit now, man. I'm lost. I'm so bummed out.
Yeah, I feel like I was pretty decent at drums in high school, and just thought that skill would kind of stay with me to where I could at least play in like a terrible, like kind of punk band. And no, man, I was sat on the kit the other day, and I was like, dude, you need to like practice. You need to put in some time on the. So keyboards and anything guitar related are what I'm like most comfortable with, which makes sense because I'm a songwriter, and those are usually the instruments that you're doing that with.
Cool. And what are some of the other, talk a little bit about the other projects that you've kind of either as a player, as a musician. I think when I first met you, you had like an alternative band, was called Mostly Bears.
Oh, yeah.
Was that your first band?
That was the first band that made any national waves at all, And it was a short-lived band. It was when I was like 21, 22, pretty young. And my bandmates were even younger than I was. So I think our drummer even at the time was like 17. So he was getting kicked out of every bar we played. And, we put out an album and an EP that made it about as far as you possibly could on the budget we had. We were like number one on KEXP and getting played on KCRW, did a few tours around the country in a van, not knowing what the hell we were doing. Like literally just so happy to be playing music to X amount of people every night and drinking Pabst Blue Ribbons in the back of our van. stealing money or stealing deli meats from from some stores when we had absolutely no money. I guess I can talk about that now because,
statute of limitations
exactly.
is over.
It's over, man. Yeah. Walmart will never know the extent. I would like to say, though, we only kept it to Walmarts around the country. We wouldn't steal from mom and pop stores, just deli meats from Walmart.
National tour sponsor.
Yeah, they didn't even know it. They did not even know it. Oh, we got a little greedy at the end, though, and it wasn't really us. It was our sound guy. I think he was a kleptomaniac, but it started out with like peanut butter and bread. And then by the end of the tour, he was like, Domino's, Frisbee, of rotisserie chicken. I was like, all right, man, this is getting a little bit much. We're not even just trying to survive now. We're making a mockery of this stupid store.
Amazing. But
hey, whatever you got to do to get by, man. Couldn't do that now. I honestly could not conceive of sleeping in your van off the New Jersey Turnpike before a show and stealing Domino's from a Walmart. But that was my trajectory. I mean, I talk about paying your dues, man. Shit.
And did you guys do one record is Mostly Bears or two?
We did one studio record. We fell apart. I didn't know anything about band management and personality management at the time. I'm not sure if we would have survived anyways, but when you're that young and you don't really have anybody kind of looking out for you and your interests, it's really hard to stick together. You could be best of friends. And it's really hard to stay together. So I would say we had like a good 2-year run where we accomplished quite a bit, but we had no guidance. We didn't even know how to like demo correctly. We had no idea like how to work on the next thing while we were still touring. Just things you kind of have to pick up along the way, especially if you don't have a mentor who's been there before, And I'd say the first person I met who actually was able to show me and be more of a pathfinder for somebody like myself was Hal Gelb. I don't know if you're familiar with Giant Sand and the songwriter Hal Gelb. He's kind of like, to your listeners who probably have not heard of him, he's kind of like the Leonard Cohen or like Bob Dylan that was never discovered and probably too difficult to actually tame, but equally as talented, I should say. And yeah, just having somebody who's been through the indie world. He's about 25 years my senior. And even to this day, he's been monumental in helping me get from one step to another in an indie type of world, where you have to be very self-sufficient. And and I think that's partially why I'm still here and doing it, is because I had him and after him, folks like him kind of showing me the ropes. Whereas before with the Mostly Bears days, it was just kind of like, if you trip and fall, literally nobody's picking you up. Like right. Start the next project. Yeah.
And how do you decide, like, as you kind of vacillate to and fro projects or transition, what comes up next? I mean, is there a part of you sometimes that just says, you know what, I just want to collaborate. I need some people around me. And then, you know what, I've had enough of that. It's time just to lock myself in and do my own work here with no input from others. How do you balance that?
That's a good question. I feel like when I was younger, it was too hard to balance that. And you want to say yes to way too many things. And you probably do say yes to too many things at the cost of your own art and creative output. With that said, recently, you get to a certain level in your career and you could say no to certain things that don't quite meet your standards or what you would like to be doing. And it gets a lot easier to like take in a couple of projects at a high level that there's going to be some kind of reward, whether it be film and TV placements, or like a band that can tour, or you want to just work with that artist a little bit more so that later down the road you can continue that creative path with them on a different project. There's a myriad of reasons why you take on certain projects, and it's never because I'm bored. Like I can always just write stuff on my own and I'm never bored. But with Sixa, there was something there that I knew I had to invest a lot of time into to see it through. I had seen that band early on, just us playing like Chicha songs in the middle of fucking Germany and people losing their shit, and then playing the same song in the middle of a set in France, and same thing, it like takes over the whole set, and you almost feel mad that like these covers were like getting more reception than all of your original stuff that you put like 10 years into. Well, maybe there's an idea there. And then, yeah, other stuff, like I'm a sideman as well. I play guitar for a band called Calexico. I've played and sang with KT Tunstall, Mexican Institute of Sound, and a myriad of other bands. And that's a different field altogether. The sideman gig, that's
Is it fulfilling that you can just play your instrument? I mean, someone as talented as you, and that's really your role, and you don't have to do like a podcast like this one, or it's kind of run a sound check or worry about whatever, finance, whatever.
Like it's very fulfilling, and it's almost like a break from when you're running your own projects and you're doing the podcast and you're doing the interviews and you're advancing tour support and all the millions of things that they don't tell you about in music school. You just fall into it, and it becomes like a cycle, and you look around one day and you realize like, man, I probably dedicated like 2% of my year to actually playing music, and the rest was like organizing things so that I could play music. And when you're a sideman, you're pretty much just playing the music, and then everything else, you have time in between shows. You don't have to do the interviews. You don't have to, you could spend time shooting the shit with the bandmates, which is in the best case scenario, people you enjoy. In the worst case scenario, well, you can go and see the city on your own. Who cares? So yeah, I actually quite enjoy those opportunities when they come, and luckily I can kind of pick and choose when I'm going to take those.
Through some of those opportunities, I mean, have you been able to build like a touring situation? I noticed maybe in Europe, which is kind of unusual, more so maybe than in the US.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the US, I haven't spent much time at all, like putting my roots in touring here, not for a long time at least. And that's partially because more opportunities were available earlier on in my career in Europe. So you do that and you do the circuit and you go on tour with bands like Giant Sand or Calexico. I've done a lot of solo tours there myself, dating back to like 2011. So each time you go back, your base grows a little bit, and then it becomes, you look back and it's been 9 years and you're like, wow, I have a little bit of a fan base there. It's because you've been going back every so often, and whereas with the US, it's such a vast place, man. Like, especially living in the Southwest here, it's like every market you're driving 6 hours and you're spending X amount of money on gas, and the conditions are pretty terrible. In the US, we don't really have much in the way of culture and arts and performance. And it just becomes logistically tough unless you have, like a umbrella company over your head, like, supporting you with tour support and a label who will put in the time and resources. So I've been doing it pretty indie style, and Europe has been pretty receptive to that. And that's why I'm spending most of my time there. I would like to change that. And, I'm all about not being 50 years old and having to make my money in Europe and flying back. It'd be great to like have some more places to play here.
Have you been to South America?
No, but with Sixa, we have been getting a lot of love in South America with this new record. It's the first time we invested, or our label invested a bit in Latin American PR, and they've been doing a fantastic job. So every other day I'm on a Zoom meeting with, journalists from Mexico City or Bogota, Colombia, or Chile or Peru. And recently we got offered a festival in late August for Peru. And, fingers crossed, that can work out with vaccinations and everything. That's the biggest concern, but it'll happen. In other words, now, especially with Sixa, like it's kind of a foregone conclusion that that's going to happen. But up until now, we've only done Mexico City and other parts of Mexico.
North America still.
North America, technically, but it was, I love Mexico City. Have you ever?
Mexico City's oh man.
Have you been there?
I went like 3 years ago for the first time ever.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I was like, how did I miss this?
Oh.
This is the most beautiful city. I was stunned.
I love Mexico City. It's one of my favorite cities in the world.
And now I'm addicted. It's like, now I want to go live there.
Yeah. There's a lot of expats living there.
Yeah. Well, the art thing there's gotten so vibrant, or more vibrant. So.
Yeah. It's a beautiful city. It's gigantic though. It's
so big.
I remember the first time I went there, I was playing in Vive Latino Festival, which is one of the biggest festivals in Latin America. And I was playing guitar for Mexican Institute of Sound. And I get out of the airport and it's nighttime, and like you're outside of the city at the airport. And when you go over the hill, you see like, it looks like the whole world is on fire. It's like all these lights everywhere. And you're like, holy shit, how many people live in Mexico City? And you would have thought like, I don't know, 13, 14 million. It's pretty big. It's like 40 million or something. You're like, oh my God. I thought maybe, like it's like Hong Kong style. It's huge, bigger than you'd think.
And it's got such unique neighborhoods. And I mean, it's just, man, I was floored when I was there. It's like, holy cow, what have I been doing? This is a 2-hour flight from wherever, Denver or wherever. Why have I not come down here?
Yeah. So. Top 5 city for me in the world for sure. Easily.
Crazy. So you were kind of, I guess the Kennedy Center has a program where they did some arts across America. You were included in that too. Tell me a little bit about that.
So during the shutdown, everyone's kind of getting their live stream game together and trying to figure out like what they're going to do and all this stuff. And Kennedy Center was part of that as well. So they're figuring out what to do with all these, their arts and culture program, which they had to cancel and stuff. So what they did was they started this Arts Across America program. And this was in the wake of, George Floyd and a lot of social issues that we've been kind of plagued with in the U.S. And obviously, like around May and June, it came to a height. And Arts Across America started, and this was a way for them to showcase artists throughout this very vast country in every single state and region, primarily people of color and art that represented those particular communities. So I think I was in the first week of that. It went for like 5 months. And I kind of represented the state of Arizona. It was great. They reached out to me and found me somehow and then let me curate it myself too, which was cool because then I could bring a couple of artists that I really dug here in Arizona that I thought were kind of always being overlooked. And that was very special. And you're on a international platform when you're doing anything with the Kennedy Center. And I'm still in touch with those folks. They do some great, amazing work at times especially when it's really needed, and they are not afraid to use their gigantic platform to combat some of those issues.
Right. Was that done in a kind of obviously video? I mean, did they put it up on their platform? Where was it available?
So I know it's available on their like Facebook and YouTube as well, but it's on my Facebook. I think I pinned it to the top of my page. So if people went to Brian Lopez Music, they could check out that performance. And it was just an acoustic performance. I think I played for 25 minutes and then I scheduled the other artists in for X amount of minutes. So we had an hour roughly to showcase the Arizona region.
Nice. Do you feel, since I've known you for a decade or more, do you feel, I was going to say, has your music become more, let's say you're more politically activated in the last few years than you had before? Do you feel that was always there, or do you feel it's come more to the front with all these issues we're confronting currently?
For sure, I feel just as a human being, way more politically active and activated. So that'll translate to your art as well. I do kind of make a conscious effort to not be overwhelming or overbearing with my message, because I don't want to be the guy on the soapbox saying this is how anyone should live. But certainly in my music, there's messages. They might be subtle or not so subtle, but I don't think anybody will be. I don't think that there'll be any ambiguity as to how my thinking is, politically and just as a human being on planet Earth. Yeah. So yeah, I would say for sure.
Speak to me a little bit about, you seem like you've been immersed in music for a long time as a young man. Who were like some of your early kind of influences?
Musically?
Yes, musically.
Yeah. Well, like any good kid, I listened to a lot of the Beatles. Oh man, I had a Beatles, like a bunch of their tapes, and then I got the anthology, and it's game over after that. That was certainly my first love for music, way pop music, I'd say, before I could even play any instruments. And then what kind of got me into playing guitar in the first place was, I'd say the grunge boom in the 90s. And this was, I was just a kid, but this was stuff that was cool to me. This was like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and all these awesome, loud, raucous bands that were somehow given a platform on MTV, which at the time, MTV was it. Like, there was only so much space for so many artists. And if you're one of those few artists, there was a lot of visibility. So as a kid, you could go to the grocery store and they would have like guitar player magazines and guitar tabs, and they'd show you how to play Smells Like Teen Spirit. And, me being in 5th grade or whatever, it's like, yeah, I want to do that. And I stopped playing as much basketball and started playing a little bit more guitar, and, got a grunge band together. And yeah, it was like a drug, I would say. So the grunge era really kickstarted that whole learning process with playing a actual instrument and putting in time to the craft, and, writing your own shitty songs that made your mom listen to that were obviously terrible, and they had to pretend like they were into it. I wish I still had some of those tapes of my demos back then so I could burn them.
That's awesome. First off, you're making me feel old. And secondly, since I was involved with that whole community, as an A&R guy, I didn't know that. I didn't know that had any influence.
Oh man,
when you were young. So
you're still seeing it now, though. It's come around again for sure. Like early 90s, it's back. And you're starting to hear more guitar music. It kind of went away for a while, but now you're hearing it. It always comes back with a little modification for sure. Like, people are starting to dress like Seinfeld again, and they're hipsters. And you're like, what the fuck is happening? It's like, oh my God, some of the coolest like 20-somethings I know look like Seinfeld right now. And it's like, am I supposed to dress like that now? Damn it. It's so weird. But yeah,
Larry David never goes out of style. Larry David is always in style. So.
Well, he's kept the same style throughout.
That's
so
right.
He never did go out of style. Or you could look at it as he's constantly been out of style.
Yeah, that's more like it.
That's probably more. It sounds a little bit more realistic.
So when people nowadays, like, you keep hearing this psych term, psychedelic, everyone's attaching this to something meets psych or psychedelic.
I hate it.
But is that reference to a musical thing, or is that literally a reference to, we're going back to the 60s and we're dropping psychedelics? What's going on?
I don't know. I hate that whole scene, like what it's become or whatever it is, because it is too ambiguous. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I can listen to a Bach fugue and that's way more psychedelic than you just putting on your reverb pedal to like 60% wetness. Like, I don't get it. Like, I just feel like it's too easy to be psych right now. And what the aesthetic that I'm getting from the industry, what psych is not there's a cognitive dissonance with what I think psych is and what. Yeah, it'd be more like if you listen to Chicha, go listen to Chicha from the 60s and 70s. Listen to that Roots of Chicha compilation, Volume 1. That's way more psych and way more rock and roll than anything I've heard in like 30 years since the grunge era. Like seriously, it like brought, like I was done with rock in the, 2000, mid 2000, 2010. And then Chicha revived it in me. I was like, wow, this is fucking the most rock and roll shit I've ever heard. And now I'm in a band that's like trying to bring that music to life, trying to resuscitate rock and roll.
Does Chicha, the drink, have anything medicinal in it at all, or not?
I don't think so. I think it's just fermented corn. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, if you do go to Peru, and this is something, if and when I do go there, I do want to, have an experience with ayahuasca with a shaman and do that whole thing. I mean, that's a must for me. I feel like that country's been calling me for a long time now. And, I'm no stranger to psychedelics or anything, but I'm not like trying to boast like, oh man, I'm tripping balls on mushrooms. Like, man, everyone's got their own journey. And I don't feel like that always needs to be like a public thing. In fact, I feel like it's counterproductive if you're doing it just to like create an image of yourself as psych. And I guess ultimately that's the problem I have with that whole industry.
Right.
I mean, I love the people at Levitation. I love all the people that have given us opportunities. However, I just feel like it's weird. It's a little too ambiguous right now for me. I don't know what that means.
Understood. Like putting on a flannel shirt and some Doc Martens.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, you've been immersed in the Tucson community forever. Your studio's there. I mean, tell me a little bit about Tucson, like as a musical community. I'm fascinated that it doesn't get the attention I think it deserves, you know what I mean? And certainly in Arizona, I think it's probably more culturally relevant than Phoenix. So tell me a little bit about your community.
Yeah. So I live in Tucson, Arizona, which is about 50 minutes north of the Mexican-American border. So my community is very much immersed in, I wouldn't even say Mexican culture or American culture. It's kind of like Chicano culture. And it's been generations of that. And I grew up in a very Chicano family. So that's very unique because you have all these mementos of Mexican Catholicism or ballet folklorico or mariachi and all these things that are just kind of very normal for somebody like me. And it takes me a traveling experience and having come back and being like, wow, you guys don't have that too. It took me a long time to realize how unique this land is. And you talk about native land as well. I mean, it's just a cultural melting pot here, and in the art that comes from Tucson is very representative of that. With that said, it's not a big market, so you're not gonna. There's pockets of people and journalists that always are interested in what's happening in Tucson, but it's not like a worldwide phenomenon where everyone's trying to like talk about Tucson. It's starting to happen now, actually. It's kind of like what I saw from like Portland in the mid 2000s. Like people are starting to move here to Tucson because overhead is low and culture is high. And, there's a lot of the boxes that you would check when you're realizing your town is being exploited. I think about half those boxes have been checked. So I'm trying to figure out how to either get the fuck out of here or like buy a house before it gets way too expensive.
There you go.
I know. Let me know if you find any money, Nick, that you can just send over for my house.
I will let you know. Does the studio, have you been able to keep it running during this? Pretty much, or is the overhead enough that, for you to kind of get through? Do you let other people use it? It's a business, yes?
Yes. So I don't run the studio myself, and I have I'm not liable on the LLC, but it's the studio that we use as a band, and like kind of our little family, we kind of have access to it whenever. That said, it is a commercial studio and it has been used quite often throughout this whole pandemic. There isn't a lack of, it's been kind of weird because you can only let so many people in there to record. So it hasn't been like big productions, but and you try to figure out like, okay, what do people feel safe with? Especially like, you have the mask. Okay. And then we got to clean off the mic every time somebody wants to sing on it. Okay. What about these drumsticks? Did somebody touch it? At this point in, March 2021, we're a little less precious about stuff. That said, there's still no big projects, but it's been a pretty constant flow of artists that still want to get their ideas solidified. There's been no shortage in people's ideas during the last year and a half.
Awesome. So one last question, I'll let you head out. Is there a song or an artist that like you've changed your mind about in a good way? I think we all have them. Sometimes it's in a bad way. Sometimes it goes in a good way.
I know there is somebody, and I can't think of him or her right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should have given this to you in advance, this very question.
Yes, because
it's an odd one. So
it is odd, but it's also something I think about quite often, because I wonder sometimes if I'm getting way too into my own head about something, and you try to take yourself away from the situation mentally and bring yourself back in. Talk about psychedelic. This is not a good example, but I have even a greater appreciation for somebody like Lady Gaga, for example, and the way she's able to craft her songs and even just kind of get her production to a level where it's at. I've always liked her, but I'll ride with Lady Gaga anytime. She's pretty fucking incredible.
There you go.
Yeah. I wish
you could have included yourself in that even, and said, you know what, that song I thought was fantastic at the time. Now I don't think so, or vice versa. You know what I mean? So
yeah. No, I still suck. No, I'm just
please. So far from the truth. So far from the truth. So, well, listen, thank you for doing this. It's very, very kind of you. This record is really, really fascinating, and people should listen to it. It's different, man.
Different.
And it's fantastic.
But
it puts you there. Any record that puts you in a place, you know what I mean, in a feel, has kind of accomplished its task. And I think this is one of those records that does that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that endorsement. I think on my tombstone, I want different.fantastic. Boom. That's pretty much it. Out. That was Brian. I hope. I'm out. Peace out, guys.
So awesome, my friend. Well, stay safe and good luck with promoting the record. And I hope you guys definitely get on the road, because I would love to see it live.
It'll happen, man. It'll happen. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening this week. To follow what's going on with this podcast, you can go to theradicalpod.com. theradicalpod.com. You will find show notes and past episodes, and even a little swag there if you want a t-shirt or a hat. I would be honored if you'd subscribe at Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Till next week.